Hello and welcome to Media Memory. This will be a series of videos of where I talk about pieces of media that I have remembered and experienced ever since my childhood up to now that might be worth to share and see if it piqued your curiosity. Be it certain TV shows, anime, or the like that people barely know or talked about at all nowadays. Suffice to say, you could see this as a blast from the past, or something to see for yourself if you have not heard of such a thing. After all, as time marches on and the world progresses to an uncertain future, things tend to get left behind and on the brink of being forgotten about by the general public. Which is why it's important for us to preserve certain pieces of obscure media as much as we can, so we don't forget the potential treasures we take for granted in hindsight and appreciate them for what they are. Anyways, enough of the preamble. It's time to talk about an anime series and its franchise that you all are probably familiar with. A series that had managed to gain a cult following and had maintained a niche underground presence throughout the internet, and something that very few people talked about here on YouTube, which is rather shocking actually, as almost no one seemed to know about the series and franchise. Allow me to introduce you to Legendz. That's with a Z, not an S. There's a difference. Now, Legendz is one of those franchises that seem to be in the monster taming genre released during the 2000s, trying to compete against the likes of Pokemon no doubt, and probably Digimon as well. But, as you can obviously tell, the franchise never really landed the mark, and Pokemon and Digimon took off towards more future endeavors. Judging by its manga run, the anime series, and the 3 games it has released, Legendz had only lasted for 2 years, from 2003 to 2005, before stopping altogether. So, the franchise really didn't last that long to make a significant impact on audiences in Japan and in the West. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and I should probably talk about the history on how this short-lived franchise came to be, given what limited information I'm able to find, as this Wikipedia page is the only source of relevant information I can work with, sadly. So, Legendz was created by Bandai in 2003. Yes, that Bandai. The toy production division of Bandai Namco, which also owns the Digimon IP for those who don't know. And, well, I do hear about Bandai's rather scummy and questionable practices when it comes to how it treated their franchises and foreign audiences, which might explain everything that's been going on with Digimon, and probably Legendz too, huh? Anyways, despite being created by Bandai, the franchise actually began with a manga written by Rin Harai and illustrated by Makoto Haruno. Sadly, no photos of them existed, nor any information on them, so there's nothing else I can say about them. The manga was serialized in Shueisha's Monthly Shonen Jump in Japan in 2003, then later published in English by Viz Media in 2005. Now, I could go over the Legendz manga, but I'm not really a fan of this version of Legendz after reading a few pages from some manga site. Or at least, that's not what I really wanted to talk about the most, nor what you're actually here for. So, I'm just going to summarize the premise. The story focuses on the protagonist, Ken Kizaki, who attends Ryodo Elementary School. Alongside him is his Legendz partner, Shiron the Wind Dragon, and together they fight other people with their own Legendz creatures, as well as entering a competition. Oh, I forgot to mention that Legendz are essentially the monsters of this franchise, and are based on mythological creatures from around the world. Anyways, that's all I can say about the manga on the basic level. If you want to go read it for yourself, there has been some Legendz manga translated in English that you can buy used somewhere online, so go for it if you're really interested, and there's only 4 volumes published. Now, time for what you're really here for. Probably. As I mentioned earlier, Legendz has an anime series, though not an adaptation, as the anime series has a completely different premise and direction from its manga counterpart, with the subtitle of Tale of the Dragon Kings. Here's a surprising fact for you. This anime series was animated by none other than Studio Gallop. If that name sounds familiar, that's because they are responsible for producing the majority of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series. Yes, that's right, from the Duel Monsters season all the way to Vrains, where they ran into production issues behind the scenes and had to change management of the next Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, Sevens, to another studio. Looking at the dates of the original run here, it seems the Legendz anime began around the same time Duel Monsters ended and where GX is beginning its original broadcast. Fascinating. Okay, moving that bit of trivia aside, the series was directed by Akitaro Daichi, who is involved in quite the number of anime series, but only one I recognized, but you can take a look. Also, here's another surprising fact. Apparently, there has been a pilot for an English dub of the series for Hasbro, but was never picked up. Yes, you heard that right. That Hasbro. You know, the one responsible for creating one of the most influential cartoon series of all time and has kickstarted the careers of many YouTubers here, and some are still around to this day. I'm talking about My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. Oh yes, I am quite familiar with the Brony analysis community ever since I came across the MLP cartoon, probably around 2013 or 2014, especially with the major players there and those adjacent to the series and the fandom, even after MLP ended, for better or worse. But that's a story for another time. So yeah, there was an English dub pilot for Legendz, and you can actually watch that pilot right now, both here on YouTube and on Lost Media Wiki, that explains a little more about this piece of history. Phew, I feel like I've been hitting you all with one bombshell of a fact to another, and I'm starting to feel like we're losing track here. Don't worry, that's all the surprising trivia I've managed to dig up from researching this topic, so let's move on to the main event and talk about what the anime series is all about. So, Legendz Tale of the Dragon Kings primarily takes place in Brooklyn, New York, not Japan. Shocking, I know. A toy company known as the Dark Wiz Company, very subtle there by the way, had released the game of Legendz to the general public and is popular among kids. This involves the use of Talaspods, devices that stores the soul doll of a Legendz, which are basically like Pokeballs. On the surface, these Talaspods create holographic projections of Legendz using these soul dolls for players to use to battle against other players, but obviously, these Legendz are more than what they seem. The story revolves around our protagonist, Shuzo Matsutani, or Shu for short, an 11-year-old boy who, let's just say, is a bit of a bonehead, kind of absent-minded and irresponsible, someone who's just so full of himself, and is a skirt chaser as he just fawns over any cute girls he finds. Yeah, I don't know what to make of this character at first, and whether I find it appropriate or amusing for someone like him. I know viewers would find him annoying with the way he behaves throughout the show, but I'll leave that for you to judge. The important thing to note is that Shu received a white Talaspod from his father, who works at the DWC, which prompts the DWC to send its 3 agents, BB and her 2 henchmen, J1 and J2, to steal it back for some unknown reason. Yeah, they're basically the Team Rocket trio of this series, as they attempted to steal this white Talaspod and its associated soul doll multiple times with different wacky methods. During Shu's first encounter with these suspicious agents who summon their Legendz in the flesh to threaten him, that's when Shu received his first soul doll that literally came out of thin air, and the Legendz that came out of it, who at first looks like a white mouse, which is later named Nezucho, but actually is none other than Chiron the Wind Dragon when summoned from the Talaspod to change forms. It is here that Shu became the Kaze no Saga, or Wind Saga, of Chiron. Sagas are essentially the chosen ones to be partners with the specific Legendz of a certain element, that being wind, water, fire, and earth, as we'll see later on. These sagas are necessary for certain Legendz to draw strength from and serve as their anchor to the human world. To draw another comparison, they're basically the Digidestin from Digimon for the series. How many more comparisons can we draw from at this point? Anyways, alongside Shu are his close friends. First is Meg Sprinkle, yes, that's her name, just go with it, who usually carries a camera to take pictures wherever she goes, and is the one with the most common sense among the group. She also has a running gag that whenever Shu does something irritating, she just karate chops him with the Meg Chop. Yeah, just to warn you all, this anime series has that wacky humor going on, judging by the art style of the characters, especially the human characters, which can be a bit jarring to look at. Hell, this series can break the fourth wall at times whenever it wants, as well as all the random English moments peppered throughout the whole show. Whether you can tolerate the humor and character designs is up to your taste in such things. Just brace yourself for all the wacky hijinks that will ensue when watching this show, at least in the early episodes. Alright, back to Meg. She later becomes the Mizuno Saga, or Water Saga, of Zuo the Bigfoot. Though at first, she has grown to dislike Legendz due to them how destructive and dangerous they can be, as shown throughout the series, disrupting her and her friends' normal lives. But later on, she's grown to accept them thanks to Zuo wanting to protect her. Next up we have Mike McField, or Mac for short, a portly boy who loves hamburgers and is rather kind and gentle among the group. He is the Tsuchino Saga, or Earth Saga, of Geryon the Griffin. And finally, we have Dino Sparks, a rich but lonely boy who always carries a rose with him, living the high-class life in his mansion with his only father, who he blames him for the reason his mother left. He is the Hino Saga, the fire saga to Garito the Blaze Dragon. Now, there's one other relevant human character I have yet to mention that also plays an important role alongside the main group. That being Helga Hepburn, a 25-year-old woman who has a fascination in Legendz, almost to the point of fanaticism, especially when it comes to Chiron the Wind Dragon, but we'll get to that later. The other point being is that she usually follows Shu and his friends around whenever there's a battle between them and another enemy Legendz, usually summoned by BB and her henchmen. She also poses as a teacher at Shu's school just to monitor him and his friends to see what they're up to at times. The thing about Helga is that she somewhat has ties to the DWC and its dark secrets, though she doesn't know it just yet, and her fanaticism of Legendz may have come from her time researching her father's old books, where she later learns some rather disturbing and dark secrets about the Legendz themselves. Together with these secrets and certain events that happened throughout the show, led to, let's just say, a change in the status quo and tone of the show later on, especially with Helga. I wish I could say more, but I think it's better for you all to watch the whole thing play out for yourselves, if you can actually find the damn show in its episodes in its proper form, but that is something I'll elaborate sometime later in this video. Okay, I think that's all the relevant human characters I covered without spoiling too much of what goes on in the show, so I guess I'll go on to talk about some of the Legendz themselves. For you see, as another comparison to Digimon, some of the Legendz had their own personalities and quirks that makes them unique in their own way, giving them a bit of characterization, much like how in each Digimon series, some of the Digimon have their own characterization whether it be in a major role or a minor role. This is especially true for the Saga's Legendz. As for the rest of the other Legendz, they tend to stick with the more generic names like Fire Giant, Goblin, or Giant Crab, and usually have not much character to them, as well as having very generic designs. But there are some who do have a little more personality and played a bit of a major role later in the series, as well as some of them having actual names to them. I'll give some examples of some of these kinds of Legendz to make note of. Dandy the Devourer Crocodile, Anna the Harpy, Killbeat the Bicorn, Ketchi, Wolfie the Werewolf, Leon the Manticore, just to name a few. Now then, I want to focus our attention back to the Dark Wiz Company. You see, aside from BB and her henchmen working for the company, I never mentioned the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes. You would think it's the president of the DWC that appeared in the first episode, but in actuality, he's nothing more than a puppet to one of the real antagonists, Ranshin. Oh boy, Ranshin. He's another Wind Dragon who looks suspiciously similar to Chiron the Wind Dragon, and he's the total opposite of Chiron in every way in terms of personality and appearance, that being malicious and cold and having black fur, as opposed to Chiron's kind heart, compassion, and blue fur. Ranshin is the one who has true control over the DWC, often harassing and bullying the president, ordering him around to usually attempt to steal Shu's Talus Pod, much to the president's annoyance, and is rather interested, but disgusted, in Chiron as he looks similar to him, though he doesn't know why. He is often seen in his hideout in front of a huge fan, using a small electric fan to try to cool off, even though he's allergic to fresh air. Now, I said that Ranshin is just one of the antagonists of this series, so he's not the only one opposing our heroes of the story, but I'm not going to go into any further details, as it's much better for you all to watch the series and see for yourself as to how everything unfolded. And again, if you can actually find the series in the first place... Okay, I'm pretty sure I covered every surface level information as much as I could without spoiling too much. Surely there's nothing else I can talk about, like something regarding about Chiron and Ranshin, right? Something that those who are fans of these two characters would know, or someone who just so happens to come across these two somewhere on the internet? Clearly, there's nothing more explicit or sensitive that I should mention that people would rather keep quiet about, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it. I don't think there's any more to talk about. Nothing more to talk about at all. There's no way I'm avoiding this topic, is there? I mean, I could just end things here, but I'm pretty sure this is something that you're all anticipating on what I'm going to mention next. At least to those who know what I'm talking about and have been around the internet for quite some time. You see, Shiran and Renshin are the most popular targets for certain artists, resulting in so many fan art even to this day, especially when they're drawn together. Yeah, for those who are aware, you know exactly what I mean by that. If you really want me to be blunt, then here. Shiran and Renshin are very popular among furry artists and usually drawn together in yaoi ship, with NSFW content included. I mean, I totally understand why. It's something to do with the way Shiran and Renshin are designed, in a way that makes them look handsome. Even I had to admit that I became a fan of these two wind dragons because of that reason. Sure, there were other fan art of other Legendz characters, that being mostly of Greedo and Garyon, but nothing can compare to the sheer level of popularity Shiran and Renshin had received after all these years, and for something so obscure and niche. In fact, that's how I was made aware of Legendz in the first place. I saw a fan art, SFW by the way, of Shiran and Renshin somewhere in DeviantArt, sometime around maybe 2012 to 2015, probably when I was in middle school and later in high school, I don't know. I got curious and searched up Legendz on YouTube back then and found full episodes of them. Yeah, YouTube was way different back then, where you can watch full episodes of certain shows before the majority of them were taken down a few years later due to copyright reasons, or the channel owner taking them down themselves, who knows. Anyways, moving to a related topic, do you remember when I mentioned that Halka is a bit of a Legendz fanatic, especially with Shiran? You see, this fanaticism with Shiran had turned into infatuation every time he appears before her. Later on, there's one episode where Shiran took Halka on a date. You heard that right. A date. I'm just going to leave that up to your judgment. For someone like her to be somewhat attracted to a handsome looking fuzzy dragon wearing a pilot's cap, yeah, I can totally get why. Same goes for anyone who had managed to come across this character and his dark counterparts somewhere online, and are a bit too curious over what the deal is with these two. Now, as for the whole yaoi shipping between these two wind dragons, it's practically inevitable that the majority of certain people would ship these two just for the heck of it, especially since both of these characters are technically rivals, and you know how certain people see two rival characters in media. Also, if you already knew the truth behind Shiran and Renshin in the show itself, well, it kind of made sense as to why they were shipped together by fans, in a weird sort of way. Well, I hope I didn't traumatize you all too much with everything I just said, so let's move on to another thing I want to point out. I mentioned before some time ago that whether or not you can actually find the Legendz anime series. I'm sure you've already noticed it's really difficult to find all 50 episodes of the anime nowadays. You can try search it up on YouTube, but all you'll get are clips and episodes divided into parts, probably to avoid copyright infringement. You can try and go to some anime websites, but surprisingly, even the majority of them don't have the series. Well, there was one site that has the full series, but that whole website got taken down due to that crackdown last year. So you're maybe wondering how I managed to gather all these screenshots of the series in order to make this video. You see, there's only one website that has managed to have all 50 episodes of the Legendz anime, Dailymotion. This is another video sharing website, like YouTube, and there's only like 2 channels that has all 50 episodes, Anil Demirez and Legendz Reuploads. So if you want to watch the Legendz anime, this is the only place to do that, though one channel doesn't have all the episodes and the other has the rest of it, so you'll have to switch back and forth. I don't know if you realized it yet, the Legendz anime is on the verge of becoming lost media as time goes on. Who knows how long these episodes on Dailymotion will remain there before someone or something decides to take them down. I do believe some action needs to be taken in order to preserve this show, since I still think this is something that has worth, and has resonated with who knows how many fans are out there who managed to come across it. After all, the most exposure this franchise has ever gotten, and the only way its existence is preserved, is through the multitude of fan art scattered throughout the internet, especially drawn by furry artists, and video clips here and there. Hell, you can search up on Twitter X to find these works of art, of mostly Shiran and Renshin, as well as clips from the show too. That is, if you have the courage to do such a thing. Phew, I believe that is all I have to say about the anime, at least in terms of not spoiling anything. You know, looking back on the series and how I discovered this franchise through the characters of Shiran and Renshin really felt surreal. I don't know whether it's fate or coincidence I managed to come across this obscure piece of media back when I was a teen browsing through the internet, but I'm kind of glad I became aware of its existence since the 2010s, when the internet felt like unexplored territory for me, and probably a lot of people back then. Still, in the case of Legendz, I can't help but feel sad that the franchise begins and ends so abruptly. I do wish that I want to see a little bit more from Legendz, probably a new anime series, I guess. However, Legendz is still under Bandai's ownership, and based on how Bandai treats some of their franchise, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, and the chances are very slim. Hell, I don't even think Bandai even remembers Legendz existed after all this time. Plus, there's the prevailing fact that Pokemon and Digimon are dominating the monster catching and battling genre, so Legendz doesn't even stand a chance if it were to come back in some way, shape, or form. But despite all that, Legendz had gained a cult following and has maintained a niche underground popularity for over 22 years at the time of this recording. That's insane to think about. And it's all thanks to Shiran and Renshin being the most popular characters among fans, and the memory of the franchise ever existing is preserved thanks to furry artists around the internet, whether you want to believe it or not. It's a shame that almost no one on YouTube talks about this franchise and the anime series, whether they do know about it or not. The only other YouTuber I know of who talks about it is Lost in Translation Mon. I don't know if this video will get noticed or gain some traction after I upload it, but I hope I can at least spread some awareness to this franchise and its anime series. And I hope we can find a way to preserve the anime series itself in order to prevent it from being lost media and never be seen again. It's kind of awful to think about, you know, what with the current state of things right now. Who knows how long things will last in the internet, or even in the public consciousness. This is the Melancholic Mystery Man. Hope to see you all next time.